And come on.
Thanks, Jay. I'm Len Barbie, and I am an alcoholic. And I appreciate the opportunity to come and to visit you people and seeing if I can share some of my experience and my strength and hope with you. And I was a little surprised not to hear how it works tonight, and instead of just the steps, because up here we've got many groups that's not reading how it works anymore, and they're wondering why the relapse rate is so high. And for me, it all started with chapter 5, big time. If it wouldn't have been for that, I might not have been sober today. So, that's my view of how it works. So, uh, I'm going to share some of the stuff with you tonight. I'm not big on drunkalogs. I don't think there's anybody in the room that doesn't know what it's like to be drunk and to romance a toilet and puking their guts out and so on and so forth. But I started drinking when I was 14, and I wasn't old enough to buy it, so I had to steal it. I'm not proud of that fact, but I lived in a farming community in southern Saskatchewan, and the farmers would come into town and they'd get a 6 pack or a 12 pack or whatever from the bar and put it in the front seat of their pickup and go back in and have a beer or two with their buddies. And when they come out, I had their supply. I was kind of just cruising the street around the bar, staying out of sight as much as possible. And that's the way I started drinking. And I drank as much as I could, as often as I could get it. And I wasn't fussy what I drank. If they bought it, I'd drink it. 14 years old, it was a problem. I got expelled from school in the middle of my grade 9 for being drunk and having a fight with a teacher and being sent to the principal's office. And he was going to give me a strap for doing the things I was doing. And I moved my hand and he hit himself in the groin, and he's not happy about that. So the fight was on again. And that's was my final day of school. So I went to work and still drank as much as I could, stole as much as I could, did what I had to do to exist. When I was 16 years old, I was damn near killed in a car accident because of liquor. It was involved. I was sitting in the right rear corner of the back seat of a big old Chrysler DeSoto, and we hit a dead end embankment, and I went off the rear seat up over top of the front seat and put 2/3 of my body out through the windshield. And I spent so I don't know, 10 weeks, I guess it was, in the hospital. And I was told at that point in time I'd never walk again. And believe it or not, I am and have done ever since. Well, 2.5 years later, I started walking. And after I started walking 6 months later, I started playing hockey, and everybody said I was crazy, but that's another story. And we don't need to go into there. I walked through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous with the aid of my wife. That give me an ultimatum: either you do something about your drinking, or I'm going to do something about our marriage. And I didn't like the way she said that. And what I knew I had a problem with booze way down deep inside me. I didn't know what to do about it because in 1969, in southern Saskatchewan, where I sobered up, Alcoholics Anonymous was still behind closed doors. You couldn't find an AA phone number anywhere. Not that I looked, but after I got into AA, I started doing some looking and found out that there was nothing in the telephone books. There was nothing in the newspaper. And so, anyhow, I started out in a newcomers group, one that dealt with the first 3 steps. And I thought we were going to learn how to waltz because we did, every week we'd be step 1, 2, or 3, 1, 2, or 3. And never got any further. And I started asking questions. When are we going to go beyond step 3? Don't worry about it. When you're ready to do step 4, 5, and so on and so forth, you'll know when you're ready and you'll do them. Well, that was not good advice for me because I'd have never got ready to do my inventory. I'd sooner have done yours or somebody else's. And I was sober 13 months and I made a geographical move out of Weymouth, Saskatchewan to Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. And I got involved in a steps group that they did 12 steps in 14 weeks. And if you were going to be a member of that group, you did the steps as they went through. And I was not, we were all asked, when they opened the meeting, is there anybody in the room that has not done their steps? And I put my hand up momentarily and pulled it down real quick. I thought, that was a mistake because now they know I haven't done anything. And they said, that's fine. Don't worry about it. We'll take you through the 12 steps. And 14 weeks from now, you'll be ready to start carrying this message. And it turned out to be the greatest mistake I ever made in my life. It was absolutely fantastic. And I've never had to look back. And I pray to God I never ever do. My sobriety date is April 4th, 1969. I was 24 years old. And in about 40 days from now, I'll be 80. So you can figure it out. It's I got a hold of a sponsor. He was a big guy and he's loud, fairly mean, but it was what I needed to somebody to listen that would make me listen because I was kind of strong-willed, still am in some ways. And he took me through chapter 5, line by line by line. And he said, when I asked him if he would be my temporary sponsor, he looked at me like, why do you want a temporary sponsor? Do you want temporary sobriety? And I said, no, I'd like to get sober and stay sober. He said, if you want to stay sober, I will sponsor you, but you will have to do the things I tell you to do. And he started out with chapter 5, and it was kind of, I don't even know how to really explain it, but I wasn't good. I wasn't educated. I'm not a super strong reader, but I do understand English to a point. And he said, along with a big book, you are going to need one other book, and it's called a dictionary. And you run across a word in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous you don't know, you look it up. And he said, before we get started, I don't want to ever hear the words I had a slip come out of your mouth because you can't slide off of something you ain't got. Well, that made sense to me. And he said, there's lots of people talking today about relapses. And he said, do you know what a relapse is? And I said, no, not really. It's going back to whatever you were doing before, I think. But he said, you better look it up in the dictionary. So I did. And my dictionary said it was nothing more than returning back to an illness or a disease in which you had partially recovered from. And I was scared silly that I did not want to go back to where I come from. Not that I was very far away from it, but I'd been, 13 months dry at that point in time. No, I wouldn't say sober, but I hadn't drank for 13 months, but I hadn't really done anything. And I got into AA, and like I said, in a step meeting, and went through the 12 steps of 14 weeks. And he took me through this how it works of all the important parts in his opinion. You know, this is the second time today that I've done this, and I can't get over how many groups are not reading it. It says this book was written for you and I by our co-founders. And it says, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. How many of us really and truly got real serious from day one? And we were going to do whatever we had to do to make sure that we followed this path. It was a point that was made to me real clear. And it says, those who do not are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. I was ready to do whatever it took, and I didn't care. I didn't want to lose my marriage. We didn't have any kids yet, but I did not want to lose my marriage. So I was prepared to do whatever I had to do. And it goes on and, it talks about men and women being constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. I've met a few that may have been constitutionally incapable of being that at the time, but things can change. And some of those people are sober today. And then there are the people who are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living that demands this rigorously honest program. Their chances are less than average, and so on and so forth. It goes on. And if you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length, how many of us were really honest at that point of time and willing to go to any length? I moved to Alberta in 1973. I was just a little over 4 years sober. And when my sponsor celebrated his 25th birthday, I drove from Edmonton, Alberta, back to Prince Albert, Saskatchewan for his 25th birthday, had supper with him, took in his birthday meeting, shook his hand, and drove home, and was back at work the next morning. Tired, but back at work. Because he told me that I would have to go to any length, and I have, and still do. It's one of those things that the book says it, and I believe it to be true. It's never lied to me at this up to this point. So I don't think I'm going to find any lies in it that, from here on in. And some of these we balked, did we? Big time. I did not want to do my inventory. I'd have sooner done yours. It would have been way easier, I'm sure. But as time went on, I had a little help get started on it, and the people that were taking me through the steps said that you get a hold of your sponsor. And I was having a little problem with this God thing. I knew there was a power out there, but was he going to really do anything for me? A drunk? Like, I just wasn't sure of that. So I got a hold of my sponsor, and we started talking about this God thing. And he said, "Well, what's your problem? What don't you believe in?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I just don't think God's going to do anything for me." And he said, "Don't be so silly." He said, "Take your left hand, put it on your right wrist, and tell me what you feel." So I sat there for a minute and said, "I feel pulse." He said, "Good. What did you have to do with that?" I said, "Nothing." He said, "That's right, because it was beaten before you were born. You can't stop it. You can't control it. You can't do anything with it. It just beats." And it was a little while later. I was sitting at home one night. The phone rang, and it was my sponsor, and he said, "Run and look outside." So I laid the phone down, went and looked outside, and I looked left, and I looked right, and I looked down. And there's nothing there. So I went back, picked up the phone, and there's nobody on the end of it, just a dial tone. So I hung up the phone, sat down. A few minutes later, the phone rang. He said, "What do you see?" I said, "Nothing." He said, "Go out and look." So I did. I laid the phone down again, went out and had a look. I looked left and the right, up and or not up, but down. and couldn't say anything. So I went back and picked up the phone, and there's nobody there again. So I slammed the phone down. About 20 minutes later, the phone rang. He said, "What do you see?" I said, "Nothing." "What are you doing to me?" He said, "Did you look up?" I said, "No." Well, they said, "Go out and look." So I went out and I looked up, and the northern lights were just absolutely gorgeous. So I would go back. He said, "What do you see?" I said, "Northern lights." He said, "What did you have to do with them?" Click. Okay, I get the message that I had nothing to do with them. And that was the beginning of my belief in a higher power. And I've expanded on it much since then. And I still look up when I go outside because I don't know what I'm going to see. But it taught me a lesson that there's more than left and right and down. So, I've learned to look up fairly often because I think that's where God is above me. So from there on, I was able to start going through my program and getting deeper into it and working on my steps as we go. And, I come across something in the big book here where it says, "With half measures avail us nothing." And again, that feeling of failure just about engulfed my entire body at that point in time because I did not want to go back. And he said, "Well, you don't have," my sponsor said, "You don't have to go back. All you have to do is be willing to go to any length and to be fearless and thorough, the way things that we've talked about up until this point." And I dug deep and to make sure that I got every skeleton out of the closet that I'd ever hid. And, if it wouldn't have been for his guidance, I more likely wouldn't have been here. I still go to meetings, face to face meetings. I still do Zoom meetings. And, I'm getting to a point where I'm going to quit going to Zoom meetings because I meet people like Jay and he puts me to work and asks me to come and talk. And, you know, there's another lady on here I noticed a while ago, Penny from Southern California. And the same thing happened with that. And uh, people are keeping me busy. But you know what? Maybe that's the way it's supposed to be. And this how it works thing. Many of us explained what an order. I can't go through it. I thought, man, these people are just pushing too hard, too fast. And maybe they were. But for me, it worked. Thank God. Do not be discouraged. I never got discouraged as I got through a step and through to another one and through another one and carried on. You know, and when I got through my 12 steps, I got involved in service, and I'm still involved in service. Not to the same degree as I used to be, but I got done the 12 steps and they were looking for people to carry the message into the institutions. And Prince Albert's got 4 prisons and penitentiary, maximum security penitentiary in there, and 3 other prisons. So where I was sent to, it was the maximum pen, not as a guest, but as a visitor to carry the AA message. Me and another buddy of mine took on the job of going out there, and we went out every Wednesday without fail. And the first night I walked through those doors and I heard them big gates clang shut behind me, I was positive I was home to stay because I'd done some things in my lifetime that wasn't very nice. One of the biggest things I ever did is I used to fight. I don't know why. You get tough when you get drunk, eh? Bulletproof, 6 feet tall, couldn't be beat. I don't know if any of you people can relate with that, but When I was sober, I didn't want to fight because I knew the pain. And it wasn't always pleasant to wake up the next morning after a drunk and find two black eyes and so on and so forth. I haven't had a fist fight since I sobered up. What happened? I discovered something that's a lot more comfortable to wake up without being in a fight than it was in being in it. And as a result of me carrying the message, being involved in service and starting to carry a message to the institution, and I did that for 3 years. And then I made another geographical cure from not a cure, but another geographical move from Prince Albert, Saskatchewan to Alberta. And I got out here, and there was many groups out here that weren't involved in service, and so there was lots of vacancies, people who wanted to get involved. And I went to my very first meeting, and I started asking questions, and we don't have a general service rep, we don't have a district committee member, we don't have a group secretary. The group's too small. We don't need one. And I said, well, that ain't the way it was when I was sobered up in Prince Albert and so on and so forth. So they said, well, if you want to be a general service rep, we'll fill the papers out. We'll send them in for you, and you'll be our general service rep. So I said, okay, I'll do that. And that was in 1973 that I moved out here and I got involved. I went to my first assembly in March of that year, and I stayed active in the area until 2002, 2003 or something. And I've been blessed with many opportunities to do many different kinds of service work. One of the greatest things that happened was I was invited down to San Diego to participate in a workshop for the archives, for the archives workshop. And what an experience. And they didn't want a written report and stand there and read it. They wanted just a good oral presentation of what you did and how you did it and so on and so forth. So I went down there and there was four presenters and a chairman. And the chairman got up and started to read his opening remarks, and he read for 15 minutes or whatever. And the next presenter got up and read his, and the next one got up and read his. By the time it was my turn to present what I had, the meeting was supposed to be over. So they run the meeting overtime in order to let me present my experience, strength, and hope with archives in Area 78, which is where we're located. And when I got up there, the first thing I did is I thanked the chairman for not doing as he was told. And I thought people were going to go crazy over that. But after the meeting was over, every one of the people that read their reports come over and shook my hand and said, thank you. You're absolutely right. We were not supposed to do that. And it was a beginning of an experience that I can never forget. As time went on and I was going to assemblies, I started to think, well, how come we don't have any minutes from the last assembly when we go to the next one? And we go to that one, and then we go to another one, and still no minutes. And I'm thinking, why? Come election time, not being too smart, they asked if there's anybody willing to leave their name stand to be area secretary, and I did this. And I was elected by Area 78 to be their secretary for 2 years. And it was one of the best things I ever did. I come home from that assembly and I sat down and I started to type, and I'm not a typist, but I managed to pick and peck and get them done. And 3 weeks after I come home from the assembly, I had the minutes printed and proofread and ready to go to print. I went in to Staples, is where we had all our photocopying stuff done. It was about the cheapest place we could find at the time. And we had 300 copies photocopied. And I went back the next day and picked them up and carried them out in 3 boxes. I come home and started typing on mailing addresses, putting the mailing addresses on envelopes and stuffing minutes in them. And a day later, I took them to the post office. About 3 or 4 days later, my phone started ringing. Said, "What are you trying to do?" And I said, "Why? What's wrong?" "Well, I just got my minutes in the mail." I said, "And what's the problem?" And the guy said, "God," he said, "by the time the assembly comes around, I'll lost them." I said, "That's your problem, not mine." And that's just the way it was, and that was uh, many years, many years in different positions. And I left my name stand for area chair, and I got defeated, and that was fine with me. Uh, I carried on and started doing stuff back here in the district, being involved and doing 12-step work and phone calls and cooperation with professional community and so on and so forth. It was, and it was just one thing after another after another. And there was an opportunity to get involved in a district roundup up here. And they wanted to get one going, and they didn't have anybody with any experience. And I said, "Well, I've been involved in a few roundups, but I've never chaired one or done anything." "Well, that's good enough. Let's do it." So we did. And that roundup is still going today. And you know, it's one of these things that uh, we don't put on a major convention or anything, but we have 250 people or whatever come in every year, and we do a barbecued steak supper, steak or chicken, baked potatoes, salads, the whole 9 yards. And we do that all with a membership, no caterers. And the fellowship will jump in there for service. And we're blessed that we have many people in this little area of ours. It's, I don't know, maybe 40 miles wide, 40 miles long or whatever, and maybe a membership of 250 people in it. But we never run short of service people. It's absolutely fantastic. And we've made many trips back, to different roundups to share our experience, strength, and hope, and for do whatever we had to do in order to get through it. And I hope I can continue to do this for a few more years. I was on a meeting earlier, and I said that I got 40 days to go and I'll be 80 years old. And when do you slow down and when do you start behaving yourself and acting like a grown up? And I hope that never happens. It's more fun, doing the things that I'm doing today. You know, and I gotta mention that I listened to Jay speak at a meeting one time, and he spoke about combining the steps along with the corresponding tradition. And he's the first guy I've ever heard try to explain that. And he did a fantastic job. He even wrote a book upon it. And I've got the book ordered, by the way, Jay. If with mail strike ever gets over up here, the postal workers are back to work. They've been ordered back to work. So anyhow, hopefully the book will show up here. But I've tried to cooperate my personal life and my home life with the traditions as we've went through our merry way. And that wife that gave me the ultimatum 55 years, 8 months, and so many days ago, I'm still married to today. You know, July of 2025, we'll celebrate 59 years of marriage if we make it that far. You know, with any luck at all, we will. And because of that marriage, I've got two kids, a 51-year-old and a 49-year-old that's never seen their father drink. They know all about my drinking, and they were brought up and raised in AA and Al-Anon. But they've never experienced seeing me drink, and I pray to God they never do. And I keep telling them that if they've ever got a problem, I've got a couple extra big books here waiting for them. And I have. They're on a shelf behind me. And they know that. They've seen them. So they know where they are. And my son phoned me here a while ago. He's the manager of a yard that supplies building materials for many contractors. And he had a driver delivering stuff and he got picked up for impaired driving. And needless to say, he's out of a job. So our son said, well, you're going to be out of a job, but you go get help, straighten your life out. And the guy looked at him and said, where do I go? And my son said, here is the phone number of my father, that he's been sober since 1969. And I've never seen him drink, but I know about it and blah, blah, blah. And the guy said, yeah, okay. He said, I'll phone him. He never has, but he's still alive. So there's still hope. But that's all we can do, and they're not afraid to say who I am and what I am. And thank God. And it's one of those things that using my full name on here is another thing that I've been criticized for, you know. And I see Jay does it, but we don't have to be anonymous amongst friends. Dr. Bob said we've got two kinds of anonymity breaks. One where we're so anonymous our friends can't find us, and the other one is when we stand on street corners trying to promote. And I'm not a promoter, but I'm not hiding behind my name. If you ever come to Spruce Grove, Alberta, which was where I'm at, you ask somebody if they know me by my full name, you've got a possibility of maybe finding me. But if you come here and ask for somebody by the name of Len B, you ain't got a hope in hell of finding me. I'm sure of it. There's 40,000 people living here. So I'm not an anonymous guy among friends. And as many people, my sponsor's not an anonymous person. People I know that's not anonymous, and people like Jay, and on and on and on and on. And we don't have to hide about who we are. If I want my friends to know who I am, what I am, and I've never hid that I am a member of Alcoholics Anonymous to anybody I've ever worked for. I've 12-step people I've worked with because they were in trouble with management, and either they straightened out or they were going to be unemployed. And if you want to straighten your life out, I'm going to introduce you to a guy that can maybe help you. And they got me involved in it. I'd like to say that everybody I've ever 12-step call it has been a success. And it was. I don't know how many other people are sober, but you know what? I am. As a result of carrying this message, and I like to carry the message that's contained in the literature of AA, not some other version of, as I hear in many cases coming out of people's mouths, and like 90 meetings in 90 days. That is nowhere written in Alcoholics Anonymous literature. If it is, please let me know which book it's in because I've never found it. If I'd have had to go to 90 meetings in 90 days when I sobered up in southern Saskatchewan, I'd have never been home. Because back in 1969, I don't think there was 90 meetings in Saskatchewan. It was, it's impossible. You could take in 90 meetings in 90 days on Zoom because you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to do anything. Just walk in, turn a computer on or a phone on, and punch in a few numbers, and you're on. And you can sit there and hide. You don't even have to get fully dressed. I do, but I know people who don't. But anyhow, it's one of those things, and there's people on here that's half dressed. That's fine, as long as I can see the part that is dressed. Because I was told that the problem with the alcoholic is centered in his mind. I just got an announcement coming here in Tradition 11. Okay, and anyhow, it's one of those things that I can't say enough about the service structure of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's the only thing that works upside down. The member is at the top of the list, and it goes down to delegates and down to our general service office and so on. It's the only thing I know that works that way and works successfully. We're coming up to 90 years in Alcoholics Anonymous next June, and uh, people from way back when said it won't work. You got to have leaders. You got to have, you got to have that. And Bill and Bob said, no, you don't. You know, when they put out that book, The Great Responsibility, fantastic. You get to know how everything came to focus on all of our service structure. Greatest little book. It's only a little thing and not very thick, but very informative. So, and I think I'm going to run out of stuff to say here if I haven't done it already. So I maybe haven't used up quite all my time, Jay, but I'm going to say thanks for letting me share. And that's going to be it. Thanks.
Yay. Oh, God.